In today's video, we're going over every single team's best player in the NBA so far this season. Now, it may not be the best player on paper or your favorite player, but every player on this list is the most important and the best player so far in the 2024-2025 NBA season. Now, sit back, relax, get your popcorn out. We're going over every single team in the NBA. Let me know down below whether you agree or disagree. I'm reading every single comment and replying to every single one too. Let's get right into this video. Starting off with the Atlanta Hawks, I'm going to go with Jalen Johnson over Trae Young as this team's best player. So far this season, Jalen Johnson's averaging 20 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists, and he is easily filling in the shoes as the number 2 option in Atlanta. Even though this Atlanta team is pretty mid, Jalen Johnson is a rising star, and I can see him being an all-star next year or maybe even the year after. And defensively, he also leads the team in blocks, and this kid's only 22 years old, so there's a lot of Jalen Johnson we haven't seen yet. Next up, the Boston Celtics. My Boston Celtics. Obviously, the Celtics' best player is Jason Tatum. Not only is Jason Tatum a top 3 MVP candidate this season, he's averaging almost 30 points per game, 9 rebounds a game, and 6 assists per game. Also, he's shooting a career high 45.6% from 3 this season. Obviously, the Celtics team is the favorite to win the whole NBA championship, and they're relying on Jason Tatum to guide them there. Next, the Brooklyn Nets, and no, I'm not taking Cam Thomas, I'm taking Cam Johnson as this team's best player. Now, although Cam Thomas is exciting to watch, he's been injured throughout the season, and Cam Johnson hasn't just been picking up the slack, he's been absolutely crushing it. This season, he's played in all but one game. He's shooting 49% from the field and 43% from 3. And looking back at his last 10 games, he's averaging over 20 points per game with 4 rebounds. And honestly, I can see a championship contender or a team that's trying to become a championship contender trade for Cam Johnson down the stretch. The next team is the Charlotte Hornets, and it's of course LaMelo Ball. Now, LaMelo did just get injured, but he's still the best player on his team. Pretty much between him and Brandon Miller, there's no exciting players in the Hornets at all. And LaMelo is the definition of exciting. And before he got hurt, he was averaging 31 points per game, second most in the whole NBA. Next up, we have the Chicago Bulls, and it was really hard deciding who the best player is on this team, but the numbers don't lie, and I'm going with Nikola Vucevic. Now, Vucevic's career has been a roller coaster. It's been ups, there's been downs. But this season has been by far his best season with the Chicago Bulls. He is very close to being in the 50-40-90 club as a center, and he's doing that while averaging a double-double. It's pretty clear and obvious that the Chicago Bulls are trying to sell this season, and especially sell right now. So I can see a team like the Golden State Warriors or another team that needs a push into title contention trading for Nikola Vucevic. Next, let's move to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference because of this man, Donovan Mitchell. Yes, Donovan Mitchell is their team's best player. Although he's not averaging a crazy 30 points per game like some of the top guys in the Eastern Conference, he's done what no other player could do and lead his team to the top of the East. Now, I'm a huge believer in Donovan Mitchell, and I think he's a top 3 player in creating his own shot in the NBA, and he is the perfect fit for this Cleveland Cavaliers team and to lead the Cleveland Cavaliers to maybe an NBA championship. Next, let's move to the West, the Dallas Mavericks. This season, the Dallas Mavericks' best player is not Luka Doncic, it is Kyrie Irving. Now, I understand you're like, oh, you're a casual. How can you not say Luka's been the best player? Well, the numbers don't lie. Kyrie's averaging 24, 5, and 5 while shooting 50% from the field. And honestly, Luka is having a down year, only shooting 34% from 3, while Kyrie's shooting 45% from 3. Also, I'm factoring in that Luka has been hurt throughout the season, so the best player right now, Mavs fans and NBA fans and whatever watcher you are, is Kyrie Irving. Now, if you stay for this long, make sure to subscribe down below. 99.9% of you are not subscribed. Let's get to 10K subscribers. Next up is the Denver Nuggets. Now, genuinely, this was I'm just kidding. It's Nikola Jokic. I don't even have to give you reasons why. Nikola Jokic is the best player in the whole NBA. Never mind the Nuggets. Nikola Jokic, Nikola Jokic, Nikola Jokic. Next, let's move to the Detroit Pistons. The best player this season for the Pistons has been Cade Cunningham, and this is well overdue for the former number 1 pick. Cade is finally growing into the role that he was drafted to be, and with help of a new coach and veteran leadership, Cade leads his team in points and assists, averaging 23 points with 9 assists per night, while shooting 45% from the field. Now, the only downside of Cade's game right now is he's averaging 4.7 turnovers per game, but hopefully he'll clean it up. Maybe it's just a young thing. Next, we're moving to the Golden State Warriors. Now, although Steph isn't having a Steph Curry type season, he's still leading his team in points with 22 points per night. And not only does he lead his team in points, he also leads his team in assists and steals per game. Now, this Warriors team started off extremely hot, and they've only got colder since. So Steph's gonna have to bump up these numbers if he wants another ring on his finger. Next, let's move to an extremely impressive team this season, the Houston Rockets, and their best player, Alperen Sengun. Now, there's a lot of mouths to feed on this Houston Rockets team, and it was hard for me to pick between Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, but I went with Alperen Sengun. He's quietly averaging 19 points, points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists on the #1 team in the Western Conference right now. And of course, he also leads his team in blocks per game. So, Sengun, here's your flowers. The next team up is kind of a weird one, the Indiana Pacers. You would think Tyrese Haliburton, #1 player, brought him to the Eastern Conference Finals last season, but this year, he's been trash. So the best player on the Pacers this season is, drumroll, Pascal Siakam. Although I really wanted to put Benedict Mathurin in this conversation, I just couldn't with the numbers Siakam is putting up. He leads his team in points while shooting 53% from the field. That's just insane. And if anybody can find Tyrese Haliburton, tell him the Pacers are looking for him, and they need him. Next, let's move to both Los Angeles teams, starting with the LA Clippers. And this is one of my favorite stories of the NBA season, that James Harden is officially back. Now, he's not averaging 40 points per game like in Houston, but he's doing all the necessities to help the Clippers win while Kawhi Leonard sits. He's averaging 22 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists per game. But the thing that's going to shock you the most is he's leading his team in steals and leading his team in blocks. Well, he's tied with Ivica Zubac, but still. Many people were counting out this Clippers team, saying they're going to be the worst team in the NBA, and James Harden said, nah, I got this. Next up is the Los Angeles Lakers, and finally Father Time is hitting LeBron James. So I'm giving the best player to Anthony Davis, who's in top MVP consideration right now. I mean, he leads his team in points per game, rebounds per game, blocks per game, and steals per game. Oh, and he's almost averaging a 30-point double. Like, what are we doing? 80's a monster right now. But at the time of this recording, the Lakers are actually stinking it up right now in the Western Conference, so 80's MVP stock is probably falling. Next up, let's go to an injury-riddled team in the Memphis Grizzlies. And although I think Ja Morant is by far the best player on this team this season, he hasn't been. It's been Jaren Jackson Jr. And in my opinion, he's having a shockingly good year, and nobody is talking about him. He's not only a former 4th overall pick, but he's a former defensive player of the year. And he's leading his team in steals per game, blocks per game, and points per game, while Ja Morant is sitting on the bench. Next up, let's go with the Miami Heat. And their best player is not Jimmy Butler, it's not Bam Adebayo, but it's finally the breakout season of Kentucky guard Tyler Herro. With Jimmy taking pretty much a backseat role on the offensive side for the Miami Heat, Tyler Herro has stepped up and he's in the driver's seat, baby. As of right now, he is their leading scorer in points per game, and he's doing it extremely efficiently as he's almost in the 50-40-90 club. Shout out Bam Adebayo though, you're actually having a sneaky good season, although you're one of my least favorite players in the whole NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks best player is obviously Giannis Antetokounmpo. See, this guy Giannis is having an MVP type season, but the Bucks aren't having an MVP type year. Although they started off really bad, the Bucks have actually picked it up lately, and it's all help to Giannis as he's leading the league in scoring per game. I mean, he's averaging 32 points per game with 11.7 rebounds and shooting 61% from the field. Yeah. That's a crazy Giannis stat line. Next up, the unimpressive Minnesota Timberwolves. Their best player is easily Anthony Edwards, but this T-Wolves team is just trash, bro. Like, they're pretty much putting all the offense on Anthony Edwards, saying if you do not score the ball 30 to 40 points per game, we are going to lose. And guess what? He's averaging only 27 points per game, which is a lot, but they're losing. Now, talk about injury-riddled teams. The New Orleans Pelicans, bro, it feels like every single person on that team has been injured, except their best player, Brandon Ingram. Now, the Pelicans only have a combined 4 wins in the season so far. But honestly, if they didn't have Brandon Ingram, they'd probably have 0 wins. This Pelicans team is just a dumpster fire. They need to trade Brandon Ingram to a contender right now. Next up, we talked about him before. Karl-Anthony Towns has been the best player for the New York Knicks this season. Who knew the Knicks would trade for their best player this offseason? Not the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'll tell you that right now. Cat has been elite this season, averaging 25 points per game and leading his team in rebounds at 13 rebounds per game. And the Big Purr is shooting 52% from the field and 45% from 3. Although defensively he's been nothing but average, I expect Karl-Anthony Towns to be an all-star starter for the Eastern Conference this season. Next, let's move to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Their best player has been SGA. Now, obviously, when Chet Holmgren went down, SGA had to step it up, and he's been nothing but elite ever since. Shea currently this season is averaging 30 points per game with 5 rebounds and 6 assists. And besides Chet, who's been injured, he's been leading their team in blocks per game with 1 block a night. Next, the Orlando Magic. Now, it's crazy to think that the Magic have not lost at home yet, despite losing Paulo Banchero early on this season, but that's all thanks to their best player, Franz Wagner. And without Paulo, Franz has absolutely been balling, scoring 24 points per game. And I can't wait to see the duo of Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero when Paulo comes back. The Magic could be a sneaky team in the Eastern Conference this season. Next up is the Philadelphia 76ers, and in my opinion, their best player has been Jared McCain. Now, if you told me I would say that sentence before the season, I'd be saying you're absolutely insane, but Jared McCain has been the most efficient and the best 76ers so far this season. You know, it's not like they have an MVP caliber center. Oh wait, they do, but he's played less games than fingers I have on my hand. But McCain's averaging 16, 2 and 2, and in November, he went on a 7-game stretch where he scored at least 20 points per game in every single game. Next up is the Phoenix Suns, and their best player's easily been Kevin Durant this year. Now, although KD was hurt for 1 to 2 weeks, he's been playing absolutely out of his mind. I'm talking MVP KD type numbers. Like, this man was literally averaging 27 points per game while shooting 53% from the field and 46% from 3. 46? Yeah, that's just insane. Next up is the Portland Trailblazers. Not a lot of excitement coming out of this team. See, they have 7 players who average more than 10 points per game, so it was hard to pick who their best player was. For me, this season, so far, I wanted to pick DeAndre Ayton, but I didn't. I went with Shaedon Sharpe. Now, yes, he's leading his team in points, but he's only averaging about 18 points per game. But this Trailblazers team is extremely young, so they're still trying to figure it out over there. Next up is the Sacramento Kings, and I was torn between Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, but recency bias took me over, and I went with De'Aaron Fox as the Kings' best player. Like, not only did De'Aaron Fox dropped 60 points in a game this year, he's leading his team scoring 27 points per game, and he's also leading his team on the defensive end, averaging almost 2 steals per game, aka swipe a Fox. Next, we're going with the San Antonio Spurs. Their best players obviously been Victor Wembanyama. Now, early on, Victor had a lot of criticism, especially about his 3-point shot, but ever since, this guy's been banging threes from almost half court. He obviously leads his team in points and rebounds, but he's also leading the whole NBA in blocks per game. Now, with only 3 teams left, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, with the Toronto Raptors' best player being RJ Barrett this season. Yeah, kind of a shocker. See, with Scottie missing some time, I'm giving RJ Barrett his flowers. RJ Barrett is leading the Raptors in scoring this season, averaging 24 points per game on 46% shooting from the field. And somehow, some way, RJ is averaging almost 7 assists per game, leading the Raptors in that category too. Although, this Raptors team is abysmal at best. Next up, we have the Utah Jazz, who are just trash as well. But their best player so far this season, I'm gonna go with Colin Sexton. I'm gonna give Sexton his flowers. He's definitely been one of the most efficient Jazz players this year as well, as he's scoring 17 points per game on 48% from the field and 42% from 3. I mean, how can you not like Colin Sexton? Now, the Washington Wizards, their best player is, you know what? I'm not even gonna pick, because the Wizards did not win a single game in November. Like, neither did my favorite MLB team. You know why? Because they don't even play any games in November. But yeah, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. This is one of the longer videos I've done on my channel. Let me know down below your thoughts. I'm gonna reply to every single comment. It's been real. My name's Cam. Peace.